This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. 5-1 was the scoreline of the weekend, it seems, with Manchester United and Arsenal posting 5-star performances in the Barclays WSL. At least United could find the back of the net, even if they couldn't find their boots out in Norway. Ka-ching! Sam is back for Chelsea and on the score sheet, as if that was ever in doubt. Manchester City, Leicester and Spurs all took 3 points, and there were some gorgeous goals to see as well. We'll look back on all the games from the weekend, plus we'll take your questions, and that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a panel we have today. Suzy Wrack, how are you?
I am good. Good. Tired but good, as ever on a Tuesday morning.
What hat are you wearing today?
Can you not see? It's my Sam Kerr tribute hat. It says Tilly time and it's got her doing a backflip.
Oh, amazing. You know, we were discussing the microphone technique earlier on.
Yeah, I just leant right past it.
You did.
But to show you the hat.
It had its purpose. Tom Garry, how are you in your posh new studio setup?
I'm very well, yeah. Thanks to the production team for helping me get set up. But I want to know, Faye, was that Ka-ching on purpose? Was that a Sam Kerr goal reference?
Of course it was. Oh my goodness, would I just randomly throw in Ka-ching into my opener?
I salute you in that case, because that was superb.
Thank you, I take a bow. Emma Sanders, how are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, nice to see you all. I'm having a bit of a dilemma there, actually, because I'm at that time of the year where I'm actually sat here shivering, but I refuse to put on the heating because it's September. So I don't know whether to just bite the bullet or just be cold. So I'm being cold. That's a decision I've made so far.
I've hoodied up.
I made an admission to my husband the other day that while he was away working, me and Ted went under the blanket and the sofa, but I did put the heating on for the first time this year. Early September, I thought, he's not here, he can't tell me off for it, it's fine. But I have since, now he is back, taken to putting on the layers instead. So I recommend any of those kind of under layers.
Yeah.
Look like the Michelin Man.
I have got the hoodie on, so first step.
Excellent.
Is that an All Blacks hoodie? Are we supporting the New Zealand rugby team?
We are.
It's the Silver Ferns.
Glad to hear it. Okay, I was worried this was a rugby hoodie for a second on a football pod, but you are forgiven.
Right, let's talk about the football, shall we? And we'll start with Manchester United, actually, because they put their midweek European struggles behind them with a comfortable 5-1 victory over London City Lionesses in Bromley. We'll talk about Norway in a sec, but it was a real statement performance, actually, from Man United at the weekend. Confidence-inducing, some might say, from Mark Skinner's side. What did you make of their display, Suzy?
Confident is the word. It's quite nice to see some of the players that, like Melvine Malard, who was a little bit more on the fringe last season, sort of really embrace the starting opportunity. And then obviously Jess Park's performances since she's come in have been phenomenal. I think, quite a lot of people were like, Man United getting the raw end of that deal in that, it was clear City really, really wanted Grace Clinton and no team would want Grace Clinton to leave. And although they insist that it's not a swap and it wasn't a swap, I mean, it ultimately is a swap, a sort of like-for-like player going in the opposite direction. But Jess Park has shown her quality as well. So like that, they're things that I've really enjoyed. But I mean, like London City, this was never going to be a game where they kind of made their mark on the league. I think these first 2 games have been really tricky for them. So I'm not totally surprised by Man United's dominance either.
Yeah, we'll discuss London City Lionesses in a sec. It really tough when that fixture list came out for them. Can't kind of gently ease themselves in. But you mentioned Melvine Malard there, and she has actually struggled to nail down a starting spot since she joined the club a couple of years ago, but she's now the top scorer in the WSL, scored twice for the second game running. How surprising is it? It's taken her a little bit of time, Tom, but is it maybe that Mark Skinner hasn't quite seen her potential? Which way around is it?
Maybe a little bit of both, but I think I prefer seeing her in that central number 9 role. I feel that's where she's most at home, and we have seen her sometimes coming in off from the wide positions, or we've seen her coming in as a substitute, but to lead the line from the start, she looked really in her place. her first goal was offside. Let's not kind of gloss over that. Like, there shouldn't have been a goal. But I like the movement, and I like the way she also attacked for the second goal as well. Don't forget, she was critical to winning the penalty early on too. So hats off to Malard. She started really well, and they've got Turland firing on all cylinders as well early on in the season. But the other person who really stood out for me is Sandberg. She's had a really good start to the season. I thought she played well in all the qualifiers, really giving them an extra attacking dimension with that pace and movement down the left, getting in behind, getting to the byline really well, which is something that she's very good at. So well done to them, but a huge week now because they have to win on Thursday. No excuses. They have to turn that tie around against Brighton, and they need to try and show something against Arsenal to sort of try and show they're taking steps in the right direction. So big week ahead and a difficult week for Man United.
Yeah, that game is crucial. We'll have a look at it in a second because they're looking a little bit light defensively, Emma, actually going into that game. Millie Turner stretchered off the pitch, nasty looking leg injury for her. Is defence the issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the areas that certainly the fans were looking to see more come in the summer transfer window. I think there was a lot of surprise when they were being linked to forwards. Well, I was linking them to forwards. Obviously, they brought in a midfielder in Jess Park, and they brought in, Junior Zigliotti. They brought in Fridolina Rolfo, who can play as a wing back, but they weren't really being linked to any, out and out defenders, fullbacks. So I think I was quite surprised by that. Obviously, we don't know the activity that the club was doing as a whole, so I'm sure they were looking at defenders. But I was really surprised to see them not bringing anyone in, particularly in the fullback areas, because, as Tom sort of said there about, Sandberg, I completely agree. I think she started really strongly. I thought Jade Riviere, yet again, had another fantastic performance. I think she really is becoming, one of the best fullbacks in the WSL, certainly. So they've got strong players there, but I still don't think they've got the depth. Those centre-back areas, I think, have been areas that they've struggled for that depth. I think, Maya Le Tissier is obviously a fantastic footballer. If you play her every week, and she seems to be able to have done that so far in her early career. But I do wonder if you put another, really, really top elite level centre-back alongside her, I do think that would really elevate that Manchester United team. So, yeah, I think it is a bit of a concern for them, and I think they need to address it soon, because if they want to be playing in the Champions League and going far in those competitions, they do need, really solid backup in those centre-back areas in particular. And like I said, I'd like to see one or two fullbacks come in as well.
Yeah, well, if they don't get off to a good start on Thursday, then the solution might be there for them. They don't need the depth if they don't get into the group stage, but we shall see. Quick word on London City Lionesses, Suzy. We mentioned it's been a tough start for them, but, they are the self-proclaimed disruptors. And as of yet, we are not seeing them disrupt. 2 defeats, 9 goals conceded. That's probably not the start that Jocelyn Pracheur wanted for his team. How concerned is he going to be? And it's so difficult to say this early on, but even when you spend big, obviously it takes a little bit of time to get up to the standard that being in the WSL requires. Is it a bit of a reality check as well?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think they would have expected these 2 games to be really tough, right? They're not aiming to break top 4 this season. That's never been a target of theirs. If you speak to them behind the scenes, that they want to be sort of in that tier just below there. That's sort of more a 2-year, 3-year goal than the goal for this season. And they've just come up, right? They're not going to be challenging the likes of Arsenal and Man City straight away. And they did cause problems in those games at times, but it was fleeting. That's the thing. No team is going to bring in 16 players and gel them straight away, right? It's going to look chaotic. I think anyone predicting anything other than sort of chaos in I would say their first month and a half even, it's gonna take some time for them to settle and gel. And then also they've got this really difficult situation of needing to get some consistency and to build relationships between players on the pitch, but having such a large squad that you've recruited heavily for, also sort of demanding a degree of rotation, and you giving some time to the players that have taken a chance on this club. So you've got a really difficult situation. You only made 1 change between these 2 games, which is what is needed, right? They need some kind of settledness. But then you're going to have players who aren't quite as happy coming off the bench, having to do that. So you've got there's all these different relationship issues, as well as them from a sort of more mental point of view, as well as from a footballing point of view. And the disruptor thing for me, I very much took that as it's not they're going to land in the WSL and disrupt things. From a footballing point of view, it's more they're landing in the WSL as disruptors, spending big as a newly promoted side, a completely different way of doing things, not attached to a men's team, obviously lots of money going in. That kind of stuff is a disruptive thing that I took from that. And I think they will ultimately disrupt things on the pitch, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen straight away, and it's not going to happen in games against Arsenal or Man United.
Takes time. They've got Everton on Friday night, so hopefully Jocelyn Prasher will be able, well, from a London City Lionesses point of view, hopefully he'll be able to show what they're all about. Listen, Tom, I want to talk to you about Norway and what happened out there. First and foremost, what on earth happened? It's giving me vibes of Sockgate. Losing some of the players' boots on the flight out. Did they even put them on the flight out? What? Or did they get lost in baggage and it's not Man United's fault? I'd love to know. They then lost on the field as well, second half goal from SK Brand's Ingrid Stenovic. But first and foremost, how do you let that happen? And secondly, how do they turn things around?
Yeah, it's really a little bit embarrassing for Manchester United, and the irony was they really did not have their shooting boots on them, did they, in the game itself, when they had so many chances and really sort of struggled to hit the target or convert those chances. The reality is I don't think anyone seems to really know where those boots went. They went missing in transit, and they worked quite hard, I think, at the last minute to source some alternatives, although the Norwegian media have done an interview with a man who owns a shop who's talking about the club coming in to buy around 15 pairs of boots and some shin pads before the game, which is quite a tale. I'd urge anyone to try and find that and read that if they want to. They're also, at the moment, I believe, I've just seen an advert on LinkedIn that they're hiring a kit manager. So whether that's just a coincidental timing or that's ironic, that did make me chuckle a little bit. Listen, they did, we should stress, after the conversation we've all been having in the last few weeks, they did do the private charter there and back. So a bit more of what you would expect from the English WSL side travelling abroad in Europe.
Professional.
Yes. But how do they turn it around? Listen, I think they can and probably will and should turn it around. They were by far the better team. They've just got to take the chances. They've got to convert. I think probably Brann maybe had 2 opportunities. I would say Man United maybe had 6 or 7. So the odds would say that they can do it, but they've got to defend that free kick better. It was really poor. Just to allow Brann to score in that way, yes, it was a dangerous in-swinging delivery, but they just didn't defend the situation well enough at all. And that, coupled with the poor finishing, kind of left them in the sticky patch. But they certainly shouldn't be panicking. They can turn it around. I was a little bit surprised by the tone of Mark Skinner's post-match press conference. He almost seemed a little bit kind of riled up by the Brann celebrations. And Man United need to deliver on Thursday.
Do you think Mark Skinner sold the boots to fund some money for him to spend on defenders in the transfer window? That's my theory.
That's your theory. I don't know. I dare you to ask him next time out, Emma. Yeah. That's my challenge to you.
Maybe not. I quite like my job. Well, sometimes.
A record crowd out there, by the way, 16,019, record for a women's fixture in Norway, by the way. They're managed as well by Leif Smerud, who was formerly of Crystal Palace. You'll remember he replaced Martin Ho as manager. They reached the quarterfinals a couple of years ago, so certainly not to be underestimated. Right, let's carry on with the WSL, shall we? Brand new season, same old script for Chelsea, far from their best on their travels to Villa Park, but still coming away with a 3-1 victory over a spirited Aston Villa. The story of the afternoon, though, was the return of Sam Kerr. 634 days. Gosh, it's really been that long. 634 days since she last appeared and scored in a Chelsea shirt, and this long-awaited comeback from an ACL injury. 13 minutes is all it took for her to score her 100th Chelsea goal. We were all worried she was going to be on 99 not out. Made the scoreline comfortable in the end, and I have to say, Suzy, it felt absolutely inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason I put her in my fantasy football team from the words go at the start of the season before Chelsea had even played a minute of football, even knowing that she probably wouldn't start a game or two, right? Like, she is like a machine and will score in any circumstance. I really found a lot of joy in the celebration because she just looked so happy, almost slightly surprised that she had done it that early on. And I think like the impact psychologically that goal can have so soon after coming back after such a lengthy layout is absolutely massive. Obviously, she's clearly had various setbacks along this ACL journey. Obviously had the court case that that would have delivered a fair degree of stress, has become a parent in that time as well. Like, a lot has gone on in her life since she last played a game of football for Chelsea. So, like, to have that impact so soon after her return is phenomenal. And also, like, all her family were there as well, which is really nice. I really enjoyed the celebrations afterwards as well, as in, like, after the final whistle, with some of the substitutes, you know, Guru Aitan, who she's very close with, just like leaping into her arms, and those kind of things were just really nice to see.
Yeah, we love to see stuff like that. And Aston Villa actually proved quite tough opponents in the end, Emma. They asked some difficult questions, created more than Chelsea actually in the first half, so they'll be pretty disappointed not to have come away with anything from this game.
If I was a Villa fan, I'd be quite positive, though, about their start to the season. We know that Natalia Arroyo came in and, you know, she had work to do. They were a team that were fighting relegation. They were, you know, really down in the dumps when she came in last season. And it took a long time, you know, for kind of her work to show itself. Obviously, they kept themselves up with a strong end to the season. And I think they've started really well this season. I actually went to go watch their last pre-season friendly against Union Berlin. And I saw some signs in that I thought were really interesting. And so far at the start of the season, you've kind of seen those bits that she was experimenting with in the first two games. And I think for me, one of the biggest things I took away from that friendly was how much she was basically screaming at Ebony Salmon to take on anyone and anything in her path and just being really, really direct. And I think already in the first two games in the season, she's, you know, one of the Villa players that I've been really impressed with. And I think she had a really good game against Chelsea, you know, obviously scored the goal. And I think she's just been kind of running the show a little bit. So I think there's positive signs there. I think they need a bit more of a bite about them, which I think I've said for a while now with Villa. But yeah, they definitely caused Chelsea problems. And I don't think Chelsea were comfortable. Just the unfortunate thing for Villa is that Chelsea are certainly, you know, a team, if not the one team in the league that literally can care less whether or not they're comfortable or in control. They're still very confident, you know, in scoring goals and winning games, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I liked Aston Villa's equaliser. I liked it. That sounds really patronising. I enjoyed it very much. Ebony Salmon's goal, the cutback, I thought was fantastic, and you know they took advantage of a disjointed looking Chelsea in that first half. Triple change at the break for Sonia Bonpastor, Tom, Alyssa Thompson, Erin Cuthbert, and Sandy Baltimore coming on. Did they change the course of the game, or were there other adaptations on the pitch that kind of changed the momentum a bit?
No, I think they did, and I think that it's sort of symbolic of the strength on the Chelsea bench that they can do that sort of thing, right? But at the same time, I also want to give a shout out to Aggie Beaver-Jones, who I think, if my maths is right, has now started 20 games for Chelsea and scored in 15 of those 20. So when she starts games, she, you know, that's 3/4 of the time she's scoring goals, and that's pretty impressive really as a ratio. And if that continues, you know, she'll be up there for the golden boot race. But no, you're right, they really needed to change things at the break. They were, I think Villa were arguably even the more threatening side. And listen, Baltimore potentially in the maybe top two best three players in the league last year. Some would even say the best player in the league, up there with Caldente, and he's such a good player to be able to have in those situations. And they've still got more. They've still got more who aren't actually available right now who come in. So it's a really, really strong team, and it's going to take something special from teams of Villa's caliber to do it over 90 minutes. You know, you might find a way from the start. You might have spells where you do really well, but to still be beating them with 20 minutes to go when they bring all the superstars on, that's not going to be easy for anybody.
No. Arsenal, similar scoreline. Well, not the similar scoreline. The same scoreline as Manchester United. West Ham 1, Arsenal 5. They had to come from behind, though, Arsenal. And the scoreline does tell one part of the story, but they didn't have it all their own way in the first half, Suzy, did they? Depth from the bench again, just like Chelsea, changing the game.
Yeah, I think so far Arsenal's season is a story of their improved depth. The fact that they changed the 3 players behind Alessia, Russo from the opening game to this one with like minimal effect, and then they start, kind of create the goals. It's Marnham that scores first for Arsenal. Like that impact, that sort of seamless impact that players can have when they're rotated in and out of a team, I think is massive, and a testament to that. But it wasn't easy. I do think the own goal was bizarre in that, like, yes, obviously Van Donselaar should have done so much better, and it was really, really poor, but like it was so wet and the ball just slips through her fingers basically. And yes, she should be very aware that she is playing in rain and it is really wet and it is going to be a slippery ball and should get more behind it. But I also am like, it was soaking wet and those kind of fluke things happen. But like second half in particular, Arsenal were in complete cruise control. Thought Russo was outstanding, Beth Mead brilliant, Olivia Smith when she came on as well, like gets an assist and then is brought down for the penalty. So like there were so many players had such great games, but Alessia Russo is who shone for me.
I feel like she's oozing confidence at the moment. You know when a player steps onto the field and you see the glint in their eye. I feel like Alessia Russo has that at the minute. Player of the match performance, 2 goals and that cheeky back heel assist. I mean, that is what a supremely confident player can do. She's so vital, isn't she, Emma, with the way that Renee Slegers wants her side to play?
Yeah, she is. And to be honest, I think she's vital, and she would be vital in any team. She's vital for England, she's vital for Arsenal, because she gives you not just the goals, like you say, she gives you that bit of audacity, that bit of skill in and around the box. She's always involved in goals, even if she's not scoring them, whether that's her movement, whether that's her touches in and around the box. She's just such a clever player, isn't she? And one of the things that you get with Russo, and I don't mean this as a patronising thing, because, we talk about professional footballers, they should all be giving 110% in every game. But she genuinely does go above and beyond. Like, I'd love to see her running stats compared to, Europe's best players, because I'd imagine she'll be in that top percentage every single game. So when you have that as a baseline, and then you add the quality that she has and the confidence, the audacity, the skill sets, you've got a really complete player there. I found it really fascinating, actually. I spoke to her on the Arsenal Media Day before the season started, and I asked her about that confidence. And she'd sort of said that, she'd only really been a striker as such. She'd only really started to learn this role in the last 4 years. And I found that such an interesting answer, because she has played, obviously out wide. She's played a little bit deeper. But to actually be an out-and-out number 9, which she's kind of playing under Renee, but with still that freedom, she sees that as quite a new role. It looks like she's already mastered pretty much all of the elements of it. She's one of the most outstanding players in the WSL easily. She'll be right up there in terms of the Ballon d'Or as well. So I think this is the best football I've ever seen her play. Obviously she's had a lot of success with England as well, but to actually see that week in, week out for Arsenal, I think is another level. And I think she's showing that consistency, and that, particularly as a striker, for me is probably the most important aspect of everything, is to be able to do that every single week and never really have a bad game. It's such a skill.
Yeah, it is. West Ham, Tom, how do you solve a problem like West Ham? They didn't offer a lot going forward, which is surprising, bearing in mind you've got Shakira Martinez, Wecky, Asai up front for them. But defensively, they were, sounds strange to say, actually pretty decent, bearing in mind they let in five goals. What does she take from that, Rhiann Skinner? Was the scoreline a bit harsh? Give us some positives. I'm sure she's taken some herself, but see what Tom Garry can give her.
Well, I think the reality is that the squad, and the level that it's at, and the operating budget and all those sort of things that they're playing is sort of like bottom 3, bottom 4. So that's where they are. Realistically, they are going to lose these kind of games unless they can have their best day and someone like Arsenal can have a really off day. But I kind of agree with the way you phrased that question totally, because it's the forwards that I kind of expected to be the stars, right? They've got the attacking. The best thing about their squad is the attacking options, right? With Asai and Martinez, and they had so much success with those combinations in the second half of last season. So that was sort of the bit you'd have expected to be outperforming And yet they haven't quite clicked yet. It was similar when I saw them play at Tottenham on the opening weekend, that things just weren't quite cohesive in the final third, when that was the one area you kind of expected them to be the most dangerous. It'll come, they've got time to kind of get things going. I would judge them more on the games when they go to, say, I think in October they're going to London City, for example, away from home. They've got matches coming up before then where they'll try and get some points. Attempt to offer positivity is probably not. It's probably more depressing. This is just a reality of where they are. Like they're not. I don't have them in the same category as Aston Villa, who I think looking, even though they lost to Chelsea, are looking like a side capable of a top half strong finish. I just think this is where West Ham are. I think that's just the honest, brutal reality of it.
That's a fair point, a fair assessment, I would say. Right, that's it for part one. In part two, we're going to look at how some of the other teams got on. Welcome back to part two of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Let's continue with the rest of the weekend's Barclays WSL action. The other Friday fixture saw Andre Jurglets earn his first win as Manchester City manager, his team coming from behind against Brighton to win by 2-1. Brighton started well, Suzy, didn't they? Energetic in their press as well, but trying to keep that up for 90 minutes, particularly against a team like Manchester City, is pretty tricky.
Yeah, it's always going to be tough defending against City's attack, isn't it? That's the reality. But I thought them really good account of themselves, Brighton, in that first half in particular. Second half, it got a little bit difficult for them. I'm not sure why. They just lost their shape a little bit and seemed to struggle a little bit more. But first half, I think it's a really solid performance and reflective of the potential that they have to do something. It was nice to see Ajamang force the save that led to the goal and things like that. Some nice play from those forwards, some nice linking up. Frank Kirby on the score sheet is always great to see from someone who feels increasingly old as every player edges towards their retirement. But yeah, I thought it was a decent performance in the first half, but just sort of, when you're up against a team like Man City with the strength of players they have, the depth they have, and the fitness levels and ability to rotate they have, then you're going to struggle.
Talk to me about these stats, Tom. 19 chances created for Manchester City, but 8 on target. Wasteful in front of goal again. Vivianne Miedema could have had a hat-trick. Bunny Shaw as well. What is the reason for this, do you think?
Do you know what? I'm not concerned about those stats at all, Faye. I'd be much more concerned if they weren't creating the chances. And players of that calibre, forwards like Bunny Shaw, Hemp, Miedema, they will score. The statistical reality is that they'll be converting those. So I don't think that's a worry at all. That will click with a little bit more match sharpness maybe as the autumn rolls on. So if you're a Manchester City fan, don't worry. The goals will come. You're creating so many chances. And I really liked the way that, the fascinating thing about them right now is that Hasegawa is being deployed in this much more forward-looking role. She's being allowed to roam forward more. Jurglets has spoken about wanting to kind of find a balance of using her in a more attacking way while also not losing the things that made her so good last season in that deeper role. And it's worked in the sense she's come up with the winner. That sort of seems to be the big difference in the way their midfield is set up now. So they found a way to win it, and I think there's positive signs for the way they're playing with the ball as they go forward now. So no, that may not be the answer you're expecting, but my message would be, don't worry, that the goals are going to come. That they're creating so many opportunities, and that's got to be a good thing.
I don't pose a question expecting any answer in particular, Tom. I like you to guide me in the direction with your expertise, which you have. And actually, producer Sofa's reminded me that before this season, Lauren Hemp, Vivianne Miedema and Bunny Shaw had actually only played 3 times together in the league because of injuries between them all. So, it's going to take a little bit of time, isn't it, to click like this. Whereas Yui Hasegawa's been given a more fluid role in this City setup than she had under Gareth Taylor. Got her goal as well, lovely finish. Are we maybe starting to see her attacking qualities come to the fore again, Emma?
I'm absolutely obsessed with her. I'm so glad Tom brought her up because I've loved watching her in these first 2 games. I mean, I've loved watching her for her entire career, but particularly in these first 2 games because I completely agree, and actually, I think it's been a bit of a mastermind move by Andre Jurglitz coming in and seeing that, and seeing the fact that I think people are clocked on. While they were a large portion of the time still not able to stop it, but I think people have clocked on that City were so dangerous, out wide because of the forward players that we've just said. When you've got someone like Khadija Shaw in the middle, then naturally, you've got to use your wide players to put those balls into the box. But I think what they have now with Hasegawa in that more attacking position is they have someone with such high quality, like she genuinely is one of the best players in the world, with that intelligence, that sort of really good kind of agile skill set movement in those small spaces. So you're now adding, I think, another dimension to your attacking game where defensively you can't just set up quite narrow and kind of push them out wide and just deal with the crosses. You've really got to watch those small spaces right on the edge of the box where Yuri Hasegawa will really like to operate. And I think so far she's taken advantage of that, because teams, they don't really know what to do, because if you try and push them out wide, then you're giving the ball to Lauren Hem. if you try and stop that attacking threat out wide, then you're opening up spaces for Hasegawa in the middle. So I think what they've done is they've opened up another branch, if you like, of a really good attacking threat at Manchester City. And I'm excited to see what she can do this season when she learns that role a little bit more and she plays in that role a little bit more. But I think she's a fantastic player for City. I think Jurglitz is basically come in and realised that she is a player that can win games and that can turn games for him.
Yeah, and we saw that for sure. We weren't sure whether either of these two teams were going to win, or if we were going to get a boring goalless draw. Leicester City and Liverpool, both clubs that started the season with several question marks over them for various different reasons. And it felt like a crucial encounter at King Power Stadium on Sunday, and it finished Leicester 1, Liverpool 0. Rick Passmore's side taking home the 3 points. That was despite being down to 10 players, because Shannon O'Brien saw red for a second bookable offence. But Emily Van Egmon's goal saw them get their first victory of the season. 26% of the ball Leicester had, actually, Suzy, scored with their only shot on target. I mean, look, those stats don't lie. We talked about creativity with some of the other teams. Sometimes you just need one goal and you get the 3 points. But what did you make of the defensive display? They've got a real resilience that they've kind of built up over the last 12 months. How impressive was that?
Yeah, very impressive. I think they've got a little bit of consistency now in their starting 11. There's obviously a new manager in, which changes things and can give you a little bit of a boost regardless of sort of who it is and when it happens. Like, I think it's inevitable that you get that a little bit. Sometimes any change can be beneficial, even if it's just short term. I'm more concerned about Liverpool and like their lack of cutting edge in this game than I am about Leicester. I think, Leicester's resolve when they went down to 10 players and the sort of, I suppose, when a team feels a little bit hard done by, regardless of whether that's accurate or not, they can find a little bit of fire in their bellies in a way that can sometimes get you over the line. For me, the bigger concern in this game was the state of Liverpool.
Emma Sanders, the state of Liverpool. Wow, how are Liverpool fans going to be feeling about that?
Yeah, it's definitely a concern. I completely agree with Suzy. I think, when you go to the club, you speak to the club, Gareth Taylor, I think, has been quite open about it. I think there was always an understanding that I think it would be a really grueling few months up until January, because they haven't got the squad depth, they haven't got enough quality in the squad. And I think he's a manager that's obviously come in with such a stark different style of play to what Liverpool have been used to, and he wants to play that possession-based football. He wants to play out from the back. He wants to dominate the game, as the stats have shown against Leicester. The problem I find, though, and I think it's fair to say that we found this a lot when Gareth Taylor was at Manchester City, was that when it's not working, it is just so stale. And I think at the moment, because Liverpool have got nothing coming off the bench, and there's an argument they haven't got enough quality already in the squad, that they're dominating games. They dominated against Everton in the first half and we're 2-1 down. Like, you can't win football matches when you just keep the ball but do nothing with it, to be blunt about it. So I think it's concerning because of the manner in which they've lost the first 2 games. And actually, I was quite positive, for them after the Merseyside derby in a weird way, because Everton were the favourites in that game. They brought in some real quality in the transfer window. They've got a really good record at Anfield. And that first half, a lot of people were saying, and me included, that was the best I'd seen Liverpool women play in I can't remember how long. But like I say, they were 2-1 down. So I think going into the game against Leicester, I think people were like, okay, I think they showed enough that even if it's not clicking yet, you need to be getting results against Leicester, who a lot of people think will be really struggling this season. And yet Leicester come away with a win. So it's all well and good saying we need time, we need to build this, we need to build that, we need to get through to January. You've still got to get results. The Football League isn't just going to stop for half of the year. So to come away from Leicester without anything when you've dominated 80% of the possession, I think it's a bit unforgivable, really.
Interesting. Tottenham backed up their opening day win with a comfortable 2-0 victory away at Goodison Park. Things seem like they're looking a little bit brighter, Tom, for Martin Ho's side creatively. Kathinka Tandberg's stunning goal, first for the club. It was an absolute beaut, wasn't it? It was the icing on the cake for them. How different do they look from last season?
Yeah, I was at Goodison. I'm very impressed with Tottenham. This was a performance that really built on the opening when they were much better than they were against West Ham. Another clean sheet as well. 2 clean sheets in a row, which is really rare for Tottenham in the WSL. And the new front two combined really well. Tandberg and England. England essentially in the number 10 role, a little bit deeper, but she led the press so well and was just such a energetic forward in that game. Both the goals came from essentially Spurs pressing and winning the ball off Ishikawa, who was quite upset at the end of the game. But I really liked what Brian Sorensen said afterwards. He said that essentially, that's football. She played really well in the first game at Liverpool. She was young and she was learning, and they were fully supporting her for kind of making a couple of mistakes. But they weren't just about mistakes. Look, Tottenham deserved the win. They were creating more. They linked up really well. And Tandberg, let's just applaud Tandberg for the audacity of shooting with a first-time strike from around 35 yards, seeing the keeper off her line. And from what Martin Ho said straight after the game, she had actually done it in training just a few days beforehand. And I know from talking to somebody at Hammarby that she did it last season in the league there. So think we need to find the footage of that and maybe put the 2 goals together. Really encouraging for Tottenham. Really, really encouraging. Another good performance from Koga as well, who we mentioned on a previous pod, I think. But, they're one of their summer signings, who's still really young, Japan international, a centre-half who I think a lot of clubs were looking at. And she started, despite being 19 years old, she started with 2 clean sheets in the WSL, so fair play.
Are you trying to be an analyst as well as a journalist?
No, I'm really not a very good analyst.
Giving them all a clue ahead of when they don't give away her superpower if other people haven't done their research. Look, disappointing for Everton, their first game at their new home, particularly after last week's Merseyside derby success. Didn't register a single shot on target. We actually had a message in on X from Hans Solo 1918. Can Everton do what many have failed to do and bring in the numbers to Goodison Park? Not sure performances like that will do that, Suzy, but what do you reckon going forward?
I'm just really happy that Star Wars characters are taking an interest in women's football and the Women's Super League. That's really doing it for me. In terms of Everton, I'm actually feeling quite good about their season. There's going to be games like this in that sort of mid-table pack that they sort of have the rub of the green of and don't. I mean, it's disappointing not to get a single shot on target, obviously, but they had 19 touches in the opposition box to Spurs' 25. So, it's not that they're not getting into the spaces in and around the box and creating moments, if not them directly leading to shots. So I'm not overly concerned with them across the course of the season. They've got huge talent in that squad. If they could just play Liverpool every single week at Anfield, they'll be fine.
I'm not sure if the fixture gods are going to provide that for us, I'm afraid. It was a busy weekend in the Barclays WSL2. Eye-catching games around. Charlton Athletic, the only team to win their first 2. Southampton and Crystal Palace shared the spoils in an 8-goal thriller. That was brilliant. 4-4, fantastic. Birmingham held by Sunderland. Newcastle held by Sheffield United. Nottingham Forest, though, got their first WSL2 win. But actually, speaking of Sheffield United, Tom, news this week centring around that club. They've had a busy week, it feels, men's and women's. But you reported that Ash Thompson had been suspended from his duties as head coach. What more can you tell us about the situation going on up in the Steel City?
Well, there was a bit of mystery around their first game of the season when they played on the opening night, and Ash Thompson was described as simply being unavailable. As we understand it, that's because he's been suspended from his duties. Exactly what has triggered this, we have to be, honest and say that at the moment we're not able to report that right now. But clearly, this is not just some kind of absence for personal reasons. As we understand it, this is a matter that's sort of an internal process. So for the time being, the club are under the interim leadership of Luke Turner, who has done it 3 times before, and I think is seen as a relatively steady pair of hands. They picked up a good result at the weekend. He's experienced of having to step up into the situation, but it just feels as though club just sort of can't catch a break. They kind of seem to have lurched from one problem to the next. So the players and the fans will hope for a kind of speedy resolution, I guess, and a bit more clarity, because it's a bit of a difficult situation at the moment for everyone involved. But when we can report more, we will. But this is not the start to the season that I think Sheffield United would have wanted off the pitch. On it, I think they look good on Sunday, so that's some encouragement for them amidst the uncertainty. So we'll see how they can get on over the coming weeks.
Yeah, we will keep you posted. England have announced a series of homecoming fixtures for the autumn. They're going to face Brazil at the Etihad and Australia at Pride Park in October. Then they're going to round out a successful 2025 against China at Wembley and Ghana in Southampton. A variety of opposition, Emma. How important are these friendlies going to be in preparing for the 2027 World Cup, which seems a long way away?
Yeah, it's just straight back at it, isn't it? I feel like the Euros was only last week. Poor Serena's probably not had any time off. I've seen her all around the country at WSL games over the last 2 weeks. So it will be important because, they need to build on the success of the Euros, keep up that momentum. It's just as much about kind of, travelling around the country as well, building the connection with the fans, those who might have watched the Euros that now want to go and watch the Lionesses in action. I think the opposition is really interesting. I'm absolutely delighted that there's a game in Manchester, first and foremost. That was what I took away from the fixture announcement. So I don't have to travel too far for that one. So that's good. I also thought it was interesting that they're going back to Pride Park after the whole, Women's League Cup final saga, I think is how I would describe it. But yeah, I'm interested to see, how they get on against, like an African opposition. I think it's rare that we get to see European teams play African teams. So obviously in the build up to a World Cup, they're the type of fixtures that I get quite excited about because it's just something a little bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And actually, you've stolen the thunder from Minty 83, also known as Amir Alipur. England going to Derby after the pitch at last season's Sandwich Cup. Let's call it properly. It was the Subway Women's League Cup final. But do not worry because they have relayed the pitch. So hopefully not the same kind of issues that we saw and rightly criticised last season. Finally, I just want to read an email that came in from Jim, following on from Alessia Bassetta's piece in The Guardian's Moving the Goalposts newsletter. Have a read of it if you haven't had a chance. Hello all, following Alex's piece, could Barcelona be the next club to sell off their women's team? It would seem to make sense for all parties. After all, the hundreds of millions that Femini would bring in for the men's team would be a huge lever to help their finances. For Femini themselves, they wouldn't be held back by the financial mismanagement of the club as a whole anymore, while any investor would benefit from buying into one of the biggest brands in football and a team that is still fixable. If it's left too long, the team could end up losing more of its stars and lose its competitiveness in Europe and maybe even Liga F. Jim, what do you reckon, Suzy?
I mean, obviously they've got huge problems, but I'm not sure selling off the women's team is the answer. I mean, that's a short-term fix, right? They'd get a little financial boost for 1 year on their accounts for the sale of the women's team, but what about season after that, season after that, season after that? I'd far rather see them properly investing in the team and recognising the commercial future potential of women's football, looking at, what Arsenal are doing around kind of, big stadium and attendances and things like that, and going, hang on a second, this is a way that we can bring money into the club that can offset that on a year-on-year basis rather than a one-off sale of the women's team. I think these little short-term financial loopholes that clubs are finding, which has involved them offloading their women's teams to help balance their men's books, I think is not a healthy long-term solution. I'd love to see women's teams split from men's clubs, generally speaking, financially and things like that, in the right way when they're ready to, and when they're like on a financially sustainable footing. I think that could be a healthy thing to have happen, but this feels like, the women's teams being used as a bit of a financial pawn by clubs who want to prioritise their men's.
Interesting. Another one to keep an eye on for sure. We have packed in so much in today's pod. I hope you've enjoyed it. Emma, lovely to see you as always.
Nice to see you all. Have a good week.
Thank you. Tom Garry, superstar.
See you soon, mate. Great to see you.
It's Tilly time, Suzy Wrack. See you later, alligator.
Happy to have Sam back. Should I go and practice a backflip or all that? Kill me.
Please don't.
Be very, very careful. The conditions outside aren't great. Slippy. It's been raining. Just be safe, please.
Someone's just running to do a risk assessment for the Guardian straight away.
Without a doubt.
They'll start rewriting my contract like they do for players and have no skiing, no Sam Kerr backflips.
Extra insurance for Suzy Wrack. Keep having your say. Send in your questions via X or email us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com. A reminder, as ever, as well, to sign up for our bi-weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts Sign Up. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Joel Grove.
This is The Guardian.